Look, folks, here's the thing. You're listening to the Gray Zone podcast.
The Gray Zone.
And first things first, a public apology. My picks this weekend were horrible. If you had money or a mortgage, perhaps, based off my picks, you're a fool. And I still want to apologize to you because they were really, really bad. This week, though, can't do any worse than last week. Speaking of which, that's why we have Irish Davey McKnight.
Hello! I'm here. I just left the soup kitchen because I betted on all your picks this week.
Gross.
Yeah. I'm not really enjoying myself right now. Thank you.
Well, at least I'm not alone. We'll get to that in a minute. We are brought to you by the iONGreenville.net app. Go to iONGreenville.net. Do your college football pick'ems. You know, every week. You're probably doing a lot better than I did because it looked like a lot of people did. And that's all it takes is 1 week, right? That's why it's important. Oh, I didn't play last week. No. I might as well have not have played last week. So go to iONGreenville.net. It'll tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in and around the upstate. Also, Fett Greenville Magazine, we come out every single Wednesday now. It's all free. It's all digital. It is all good, baby. FETEGREY. Fett Greenville. Fett it be. Davey it be.
Davey it be.
I think you got even prettier since the last time I saw you.
I got a little tan.
Did you?
I know. I got a little olive skin action going on right now.
Because you were at the game Saturday night?
I was not at the game.
I wonder if those lights, the Georgia Stadium, actually affect your skin tone.
I'm wondering, yes. I think if people became little vampires walked out of there, maybe that's why I look tan. It's just because everyone that came out of there is looking kind of...
Let's start with that game and game day, first of all.
Right.
Let me just say this first. I thought that game was the pinnacle of what college football is all about. You had game day, you had the fans, you had the crowd. Yeah, I know 12% were maybe Notre Dame fans, maybe less. But that Georgia crowd, the lights, the music, the sounds, those lights were really, really cool. The thing that Georgia does leading into the fourth quarter where everybody holds up their cell phones with the flash on them, everything about that game was just full spectacle, including everything on the field. I thought it was terrific.
I agree.
How do you feel as a Notre Dame fan following the first loss of 2019? And final loss of 2019.
So, for the listeners out there that knew, I thought we were going to get killed in that game pretty decisively. And that doesn't mean I didn't think Notre Dame was a bad team. I just thought the matchup and everything was just poor for Notre Dame.
So did I. Sorry again.
No, again. So did all the Notre Dame people that I trust and listen to and are generally pretty right about these things. I think everyone was surprised. But one thing I want to take a little snarky comment. I do like how when Notre Dame shows up to your stadium, it's kind of the biggest deal, and I like that because I don't know, just I'm literally on the other side of the table, so I have to say this. I feel like it's that way when Georgia comes to your stadium. Well, it wasn't for us.
They sure did fill it up, though.
Right, because it wasn't a huge deal to us.
Oh,
that's my point. Same with Texas, because we've played in these before. It's been a while, but we play in big games. We don't win any of them. Okay. So anyway, let's. That was my pot shot at Georgia, or actually anyone. I'm just saying, there's a little elitist thing that we have at Notre Dame, and this week kind of confirmed that a little bit. That it's the biggest deal when we show up to town. So here's my thing: Notre Dame is the equal of Georgia. Walking away from that game, I don't know how you can say that. Now Georgia is a little bit better. But that game was also played in Sanford Stadium. What if that game was played in South Bend? Now, I know 2 years ago we played in that game, and Georgia was a much better team than Notre Dame was that particular year.
Still won.
It still won.
Yeah.
And so that's my point is, but if that happened on a neutral site, they probably would have, it was just Georgia was better than Notre Dame that year.
Yep.
This year, what you've seen was Clemson last year was not that Notre Dame was bad. It was how much better Clemson was than everyone else was last year. And particularly the matchup with the Clemson game. We've closed the gap as a Notre Dame fan. That makes me very happy. The athleticism, there was not a huge difference in athleticism out there.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Actually, I would say our speed gave Georgia's offensive line problems. That Georgia left tackle is fantastic. I know they're a little banged up there, but the Georgia offensive line was not overwhelming for our defense and our linebackers. I thought that was going to be the issue. It wasn't. Fromm was terrific. Fromm had to play terrific to win that game. The biggest difference between Notre Dame and Georgia is the running backs.
I'd say the biggest difference is the record. But go on. Your turn.
That was kind of mean.
Well, you see, running back Swift is one of the best in the country.
Right.
And Notre Dame was arguably able to stop them using him much at all.
Right, and he started in the third quarter. He got into the groove, and that was mainly based off of the Notre Dame's offense wasn't doing anything, and the defense fell
He had some
apart.
moments, but I thought he was going to define this game, and he didn't. Notre Dame's defense kind of did.
But he made enough plays, and we didn't have a running back. Our top 2 running backs were out, and I don't think we would have won the game with our top 2 running backs. I'm not making excuses. That's part of football. Georgia had corners, and so it just happens. But I think that was the major difference. That's where I'm like, the offensive line, neither team gave up a sack. Right?
I didn't know that.
That's crazy? And those were Notre Dame has an elite defensive front. They did Georgia's game plan was very good against our defensive ends. They started moving them horizontal. They made them run more. They ran the ball more, trying to slow down that pass rush. Very impressive. Notre Dame really until that last play, which counts because we lost the game because of that, but really didn't give up pressure at all that entire game. Now looking ahead, that could be an issue for Georgia, but
that's a good point.
But Notre Dame's offensive line going into it is a good pass blocking offensive line, and they kind of showed that. So I think Notre Dame's equal, and I'm very, very happy to say that. And I think I said this is my first podcast I did with you this year. This is a good time to be a Notre Dame fan. It's the first time I thought top to bottom there's talent that we want. There's not elite talent in some of the critical positions I feel like that we might need, but it's a good product to watch now. They're very well coached. The game plan was terrific. I'm so glad they didn't.
Agreed.
So glad they didn't just go out there and like, we're going to establish the running game. No, they knew with the running backs out and Georgia's front 7, we're not going to run the ball against them. So they really just said, we need 3 yards. Do it here and there. It was not a game plan to run the ball. And look, Georgia won a close game. We had a chance to win it. Georgia's a little bit better, and they deserve to win. They didn't make the mistakes that we made.
Both teams definitely made some fundamental mistakes. But overall, I thought both teams on every position group were just – it was the best game we've seen all year. And when I say best, I mean the most high-quality football from every position group. It was terrific. Right. I loved this game. I'm sorry it didn't win. I kind of felt the same way a little bit. I'm reminded of Georgia against Texas last year, and was it the Cotton Bowl or the Sugar Bowl? It doesn't matter. People misjudged Georgia. They said Georgia sucks out loud because they lost to Texas, and I'm like, that was just a fun game. This was a great football game. Well, that's fine.
Kids are having fun.
We're already talking too much about that, but I loved this game. I loved everything about it. Georgia did a great job.
Yeah,
hosting Notre Dame. I just thought it was as good as it gets. It really was.
And you brought me in here as a Notre Dame fan, so I do want to give credit where credit's due. The Georgia's defense throttled the Notre Dame offense. There was a reason why we abandoned the running game. We couldn't run against Georgia, so. Georgia is a very well-deserving team. Fromm is a big game quarterback. He shows that constantly. He really does. He
does. You said Fromm, and I couldn't help but laugh. Did you see the actual graphic presented by State Farm of Jake Fromm?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if we watch it, like, he's got 19 out of 28. Wait a second. It literally says Jake Fromm, State Farm.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, yeah.
Oh, my God,
it's great.
I love it.
When he gets to the league, he's probably going to be in a couple of those commercials with Aaron Rodgers about State Farm. Even if he's not a high draft pick, it's smart. It's
Get a good agent,
line.
Jake.
Yes, exactly.
Don't do yogurt commercials like Cam Newton. I know she loves yogurt, but whatever.
Hey, if you're getting paid, you'll do whatever, right?
I love yogurt.
I do.
Dannon, if you're listening, call back.
Yes.
I won't say no this time.
So anyway, back to what I'm saying. I'm very happy with Notre Dame's performance, and I thought, we had some. The home field advantage mattered. Like, they caused us a lot of false starts. That's generally Notre Dame under Brian Kelly the last few years is not a heavily penalized team.
Can I add this? I think the crowd and everything affected everybody. I saw Georgia make mistakes I hadn't seen them make in the first 3 games. So,
right. I think that might just be.
They dropped a kick. They dropped a couple of fumbles that they got back, if I remember right. There were some mistakes that I hadn't really seen them make, and that game was just through the roof. And I have to assume that must have affected them.
What was nice that it was
the biggest crowd ever at that stadium, right? I mean, you got to celebrate that. They had to sell extra seats. They literally oversold it.
Yeah, and what I really like about it was the fact that it lived up to the hype. That seems to, I don't want to say never, but it feels like it doesn't happen that often where games just live up to the hype. It's like
that's how I feel every time I turn on the NFL. That literally happened to me this past Sunday.
Right. I mean, like, for instance, did you watch a Kansas City-Baltimore game?
No.
Yes, that was a game. Hype. Mahomes throws like 4 touchdown passes for 400 yards without even blinking. Baltimore made it close at the end, but it's kind of like, oh, that's right, he's the best. So, yeah, anyway, no more NFL. But
no more NFL. Okay, if you say so.
I mean, yeah. But, back to,
I think Julio Jones and Amari Cooper have the most number of touchdowns for wide receivers in the NFL at 5 or 6. And Mark Ingram has the most number of rushing touchdowns at 4. Something like that. I don't even get to see that stuff when I turn on the NFL. I'm always trying to convince myself that this is fun. This is pro football. And I turn it on and I go, oh, okay, so the Redskins are down 4 touchdowns in the first quarter.
Yeah, well,
I shouldn't have expected it to be great, but bye.
Right. I actually feel the opposite about the NFL. I feel like a lot of games are close. But,
sure.
But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Versus the matchups in college football. Look, so far, let's be real clear. We haven't had a lot of great ones, okay? Clemson, Texas A&M. Yeah, Texas A&M probably shouldn't be ranked at all, maybe. Arguable.
Yeah,
but that game was still pretty great. I wouldn't say, oh, it disappointed. Okay, LSU at Texas. The game was electrifying. Notre Dame at Georgia. That was terrific. We just haven't had too many others yet. Like Cal and Ole Miss. That doesn't turn anybody's table at all.
No. Ohio State.
I loved Utah at
Ohio
SoCal, but nobody else does.
Yeah.
Michigan, Wisconsin? Great, but it was a blowout, and there's your example. But you hate Michigan, so you enjoyed that.
Oh, I loved it. That was my favorite game of the week.
That was your favorite game. Oh, that's hateful.
I mean, if they would have lost, it wouldn't have been my favorite game. But they were down 35-0.
I'm such a fan of the sport, like good sport, that when I get to see really good football, and then you end up seeing a historic football team play really bad football, it bugs me. It feels gross. I don't love or hate Michigan really at all.
I'm the opposite. I think it's fun to watch a team face plant. It really is. There's something about it. Seeing all the fans melt down on the message boards. I don't know.
There's something.
The best radio to listen to.
I just feel like I'm wasting my time watching that game Saturday.
The best radio to listen to is when a team's bad. That's when it's good to listen to. I think it's fantastic. I think seeing people just the foaming at the mouth and seeing people's like just reactions and you get where they're coming from. It's just I guess maybe that's why I'm a cynic.
I get it. When you're losing by 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, you don't see a lot of surrender cobras. You know what I mean? You see a lot of empty seats. You see a lot of people just sitting there drinking too much. And you know what I see is other football games because I can't watch those. I just don't want to waste my time.
I don't want Michigan. No, you know how much I hate Michigan. I don't want Michigan to be 4-8. I want them to be 10-2, and then that happens, and then I can laugh. That's what I want as a hateful Notre Dame fan.
Well, I guess you're in luck.
Yes,
because they're not beating Ohio State,
and they're not beating Notre Dame.
Okay. God, I forgot about that. That used to be such a fun. That's a good example, right, of a great matchup. Those Notre Dame Michigan games for like the past 8 years before they stopped it were terrific. Most of them.
Right, they were always good games. That series
double and triple overtime.
That series has taken so many breaks over the years. It's not always meant to be. Those two schools don't actually. The alumni and the actual like administration don't like each other.
Do you think Michigan will elect to cancel the series now after this year?
Yes.
Because Michigan's, can we just say they're pretty bad? It feels like they've lost it. I think at the end of the year, if we like look back and say, oh yeah, that's why they fired this guy, and that's why this happened, and that's why the president's upset and stuff.
So this is the thing I think that's surprising about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. When Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford and a little bit into his 49ers, the one thing you always said about their teams, they were physical. Just physical at the point of attack.
More to the point, that was what they were supposed to have last year, and they just got beat by exactly that.
Right.
It's kind of hilarious.
They have not been able to run the ball since he's been there. This is year 5, right? There's no excuse anymore. I cut him slack. I actually cut him a lot of slack the first 2 years because he inherited a mess, and he actually did a really good job.
We all did. Yeah, he got the #1 recruit. I remember that being a big deal.
But then it all fell apart last year when that Ohio State game happened. You brought in the #1 defense in the country. You lose by 30-something points, and then you go on a bowl game and play Florida, who's not that great of a team. They got some good wide receivers and some playmakers here and there, but not that special. And they get blown out by Florida. They're not going to fire Jim Harbaugh. I don't think they can.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it's going to work anytime soon because the same issues that have plagued them, they look worse. Like, he looks worse with Brady Hoke's players than he does with his players. Now, he made those players into good players, he and the coaching staff, because they were not good players before he got there.
Right.
But it's the whole bringing these kids up, recruiting them. I think what it is, too, all his shenanigans he pulls, it looks stupid when you lose like that. When you're winning games, you can kind of get away with whatever you want.
You can have as many sleepovers as your heart desires.
Right. Deion Sanders, the mouthiest player that ever lived. Why do people like him so much?
I love him.
Yes,
Don't ask me why. I don't care.
Because he backed it all up.
That's right.
Yeah. This guy's really mouthy, talking about khakis, doing sleepovers, sitting in people's making rap videos, sitting in people's trees, doing weird stuff all the time.
Well, Davey, I just have one question. Who's got it better than us? Apparently Wisconsin.
And
the entire Big Ten.
Pretty much the entire Big Ten, not named Illinois.
Probably Conference USA. Maybe the American.
Definitely the American.
I'm thinking the Patriot League is a little bit better. And then you got the Lehigh Valley.
Just lost a Pitt.
What?
So it's like, there goes that. But anyway, that's...
Wow, shoot me down.
Michigan's done. Right now, their season's done because they're going to lose to Ohio State.
They are,
by
and we know
5
that.
touchdowns.
We know that. So there's no hope. And that's okay.
And it doesn't look like it's going to get better. With him, it doesn't.
I know you don't like Michigan. So let me just say this. As a fan of the sport as a whole, I think Michigan deserves better. I am really kind of sad at how Harbaugh has performed. He's never let's break it down. Harbaugh used to be a great quarterback at Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. Did he back up his play? Mm-hmm. Pretty good, right?
Did a great job
at Stanford. The NFL. Great job there too, right? Hasn't really even come close to getting an exceptional quarterback, even close. Like, he has just not gotten that position there. Hasn't performed well at all. To the tune of when you're paying a guy that much money, at this, Michigan deserves more respect than what he has shown that he's capable of providing them back. And more to the point, he might be a perfect cultural fit, but it's gone on long enough. And I don't usually like to call out coaches, and I'm not really trying to do that now, but I don't know what they're waiting for. I really don't. And it's frustrating and disappointing to see. Let me read off a few of these. Michigan under Jim Harbaugh, 0-4 against Ohio State, 1-9 versus top 10 opponents, right? None of these sound surprising. 0-7 as an underdog. First of all, Michigan shouldn't be an underdog with a coach like Jim Harbaugh unless he's playing Ohio State. Where does 7 come from?
Well, 4 of them are they were favorites in one game against Ohio State.
Great,
yeah.
Didn't win a single one of them.
No.
1-6 on the road versus ranked opponents.
Notre Dame blew them out of the water in South Bend last year. It wasn't even a competitive game.
Great. Notre Dame was a top 10 team legitimately.
That
not all the
you're
rest.
allowed to lose that game. You're not allowed to lose that game in that fashion. That's
Michigan's lost to some top 25 ranked opponents. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
5 losses by at least 21 points, including 3 of their last 5, including Florida. Look, let's add a game or 2 or 3 to all of those stats. Is that bad enough? When do you stop? When do you say, you know what, Michigan, we gave it a shot. This would have been a great story, and it's not, and we can't redeem it. If we start to come close, then we're going to really commit. I'm okay with saying no and pulling the plug.
I am too. I think it's not worked. It's okay. Again, I think it's okay to lose to Ohio State. I think most rational people realize Ohio State is an easier place to recruit. They had Urban Meyer. They had a massive talent advantage when he showed up. It wasn't close. And he should have won those first 2 games. He didn't, but he should have. But now it's gotten worse. Since he's brought in his people, Ohio State has fallen back to where they were when he first showed up. Michigan's not gotten any better. They look worse. Their offense doesn't look like they can score against an empty field. And I think you could say the quarterbacks is some issue. If you watch that Wisconsin game, I mean, I watched almost the entire game. They were all over him in 1 second. He had no time. None of that was on Shea Patterson. And they took him out of that game because he was getting a beating and they were going to lose the game anyway.
But they know that. And Michigan's offensive line, from top to bottom, however you look at it, is supposed to be one of the better ones in the country.
A top 10 offensive line.
Absolutely annihilated by Wisconsin's D-line.
And that's what happens every time they play a big team. They cannot block. They can't pass block. They can't run block. The things that made Jim Harbaugh at Stanford.
Right, at Stanford.
At Stanford, he can't do at Michigan.
Yeah.
That's what's weird about it to me.
Including with the nation's number 1 recruit on the line.
Right.
Shocking.
Top defense in the country. You give up 60 to Ohio State last year. That's it can't happen.
An awful lot of people had picked Michigan to be one of the top teams in the country. And when I say top teams, I mean winning the Big Ten, including beating Ohio State, and getting into the playoff. I didn't see it, but I listened because it was en masse, right? It was Legion. It was a lot of people saying it. I've always been kind of hopeful, but I sort of learned last year to be a little bit more skeptical. And I'm watching Ohio State play nobody, fine, but their fundamentals are just through the roof. I'm watching Wisconsin going, how is Jonathan Taylor, tailback, a mystery to people? How is this? It's like Jake Fromm. Like, how did you not know who this guy was? He's played a lot.
Taylor's sensational.
He's leaving. Like, how are you not paying attention? This guy's... but I get it. I totally get it.
Wisconsin
now the only thing I don't get is why we would still expect Michigan to be that much more competitive. Look, they're going to lose to Ohio State. How many... Are they going to lose 3, 4, 5 games this year? And is that the kind of catalyst that it's going to take to have change up in Ann Arbor? I don't know. Maybe,
so
but what it doesn't do is help you recruit for next year.
I'm very familiar with the Michigan people because I grew up with them. I would be very, very shocked if they fired him this year unless they go like 6-6. And I don't think 6-6 is going to happen. I think this is an 8-4 team and then they might lose their bowl game.
It's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to
just
think
be real
about,
glad if you don't have to think about it.
But
right?
you're right. I think if it wasn't Jim Harbaugh and he's not a Michigan man, and if they didn't like do the whole like he's our Lord and Savior as he showed up here, they're gonna give him more years. If this was Brady Hoke, right? This was Brady Hoke, he would be fired. Having said that, as bad as Michigan is, they've looked so far. The last 5 years under Jim Harbaugh has been the best they've been in about 10 years before that. So I think that's another thing too. Michigan has actually been a bad program for about 15 years now.
Yep.
And I think that's why he's gonna keep his job. At least
I wouldn't say bad, but okay.
For Michigan standards, it's been bad.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're definitely
Thank you.
a decent program.
It's rough. I think Jim Harbaugh has a really severe case of diabetes. Overpromised, underdelivered. Needs to stop.
Yep. No more shenanigans.
And I don't know where to start. I don't think it's Gaddis. Anyway, enough about Michigan. Who else lost real bad this weekend?
UCF.
Yeah.
That was disappointing.
Gosh.
You can't lose to Pitt at home.
No, and so that really does mean that it's over for them.
It's over, yeah.
I was hyped for this, especially because they were super competitive last year.
Really
they
good
looked
this year.
Great, even with the loss against LSU in the bowl game last year, obviously without their best player, but still, they looked good in the game. They looked great this year. They looked terrific against Stanford at home, and then they go to Pitt. I wouldn't say they underestimated them. I certainly don't underestimate Pitt. What I was really surprised at is that that Pitt, with a not great quarterback, was able to throw on him.
Right.
And win the game with, I guess, 2 people throwing the ball, and none of them were the quarterback. The quarterback had to catch it on 4th and 6, if I remember right. Was it 4th and 5? Something like that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy catch. If they'd have lost, I don't think we would have been talking about it. But literally, the quarterback catches it in the end zone for Pitt to win the game. There were some bad special teams play in that game. Look, UCF got a special teams touchdown too. So back and forth that in a way that I didn't expect. And look, this is a personal thing. I wanted UCF to win. I don't hate Pitt, but UCF being undefeated at the end of the year, playing the way they are, I don't think it's that much to think. But it just would have caused a little bit more chaos. I also think people never really paid attention to UCF, even when they were arguing for a national championship. And hopefully this would have, because that year, 2 years ago, they didn't play any Power 5 teams, right? I think they had North Carolina scheduled, and at the time, North Carolina was atrocious. They're not bad.
They also had Georgia Tech scheduled another year. That was canceled.
And that was canceled for rain too. So they literally didn't have any. This year they had 2, and they were back to back, including one on the road at Pitt, and they just lost the one at Pitt by a score. And so literally they're kind of pretty much out. Yeah. Because nobody's going to want to talk about them now. I think everybody would look, if we had 5 undefeated teams from different conferences at the end of the year, we would have had no choice. We'd have to talk, and it would be a really, really tough talk. The committee's shown they're okay to do that. However, we had a lot of teams. Look, Michigan's out, right? Wisconsin, I guess, still in.
Yep, they're still
Ohio
in.
State's still in.
Ohio State, Oklahoma.
How many undefeated teams are in the Pac-12?
I think 2.
Cut that in half, buddy.
One?
Just one. Can you name them?
Not Utah. Arizona State. Did they lose this weekend? You did this last week and you were wrong, so I don't know.
Keep going.
Washington State's out. We have to talk about that game.
You wanna
Washington's undefeated. Right?
There you go. Mm-hmm.
So it's Arizona State and Washington.
Wait, is it? Are they? I know there's only one left. Look, my point isn't that. My point is it's probably not going to happen, right? Even if it did, that would be a tough conversation to have a Pac-12 and a UCF undefeated.
Unless Easton and Washington go on that run. Washington has been a team that's deserved of their acclaim the last few years. That's it. But Washington doesn't look like a team that's going to go 12-0.
Yep.
So I think that's. I mean, I think what you're looking at is the round robin of hell, the LSU, Georgia, Alabama, whatever comes from that.
Yep.
It's going to be one of those. I think to me, it looks like it's a shoo-in for Ohio State. It really does. Clemson's a shoo-in. Clemson's a shoo-in.
Good.
And I think Oklahoma.
That's fine. It's all speculation.
It's all speculation.
What we have now is we have much less of an opportunity to have 5, right?
Right.
And when I say 5, I sincerely mean UCF. It wasn't coming from whatever.
Notre Dame. It could have.
Yeah.
But they're done now too. Yeah.
Well, nobody's going to want to listen. Notre Dame could win every game by 70 points, and nobody's going to listen. So I get it. At least with 5 undefeated, they would have listened. So
right.
It's a lot to expect. I didn't sincerely expect it. But yeah, it sucks that it's over for UCF. For me, I just think it sucks.
No, I get that. I think I am too. I'm for Team Chaos. Team Chaos is, of course, the just bringing in. UCF brings a different conversation to the board, and now you're right, it's gone.
Well, and more to the point, my point anyway, I judge football teams off of watching teams play football, and I try to deep dive a little bit into the culture too. Nobody watched UCF much at all. Nobody really has, but everybody seems to have an opinion on them. Having that, they would have been just having more competition, more... God, let's put it this way. If UCF was that good and a lot of other things happened across the nation and they made it into the playoff, boy, oh boy, talk about tripping everybody's trigger who's a fan of the sport. But I would have loved it. I love to see stuff like that. And I think I would just love to see how they would compete, including against Alabama or Clemson.
It's one of those things, too, if you go undefeated 3 years in a row in the regular season, it brings a lot more weight to it. But, if you're UCF, you had to have success. Honestly, if that game was played 5 times out of 5 times, I expect UCF to win that game. It was a weird game, but they lost, and that wins and losses matter. So
they do. And that 2 years ago when they quote-unquote won the national title, they only played 11 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's frankly, that's not enough. They let a lot of teams score over 50 points on them, and including at home.
Right.
That's asking too much too.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to compare to a 12-1 conference champion from Power 5 who is legitimately playing nearly as competitive at least, it's too much. This conspiracy crap is garbage.
No. Yeah.
But literally, don't worry, UCF, because it won't affect your playoff chances now.
I did want to ask you one thing.
Please. The answer is yes.
Do you know what my favorite thing in college football is?
I forgot the name of the pit play. I really don't know. Targeting.
Pac-12 after dark.
Yeah. So Friday night, Utah at
USC.
SoCal. Is that what you're talking about?
No. That
one? What are you talking
Utah
about?
always loses to USC. As much as I hate the Trojans, and I don't think they're that good, they don't lose to Utah. No, I'm talking about the great game of UCLA and Washington State.
Okay. Oh, you call it great?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't boring, but I wouldn't call it great football.
It's fantastic. Are you kidding me? It's Pac-12 after dark.
Pac-12 after dark, yeah.
It had the Chip Kelly. It had the Chip Kelly angle, right?
Right.
You had the Mike Leach angle.
You had Gardner Minshew out there.
You had Gardner Minshew out there. That was the most Pac-12 after. That was the most naughty Pac-12 after dark game ever.
That's a great way to put it. It defines the Pac-12 better than anything.
So great, and that's the thing. Look, if you go into Pac-12, I mean, so as you know, I pay attention to the Pac-12 probably more than most people do, just because Notre Dame plays a lot of teams from Pac-12, USC and Stanford, so I'm investing into that, and sometimes we'll play other teams. And I just grew to like the Pac-12 over the years. I don't envision the Pac-12 as a real conference that churns out elite teams. But it's fun, and there's generally always good quarterback play. So there's fun things that happen. I stayed up till I think the game ended at 2:45.
Oh my
2:40,
God.
and I just was like, I'm gonna go get a round of some chips. I'm just gonna get another round of chips and watch them talk about this game. And that's all they talked about on SportsCenter for the next 30 minutes. Chip Kelly, this could be a program shifting win for him. It gives him confidence. That quarterback, I'm blanking out of their name. That true freshman quarterback he took so many shots in that game. He kept getting up and making plays. They have something there, UCLA, that seems like you just need to wait it out, because it was really bad and they didn't recruit well at all for multiple years.
Both teams scored more than the over.
Right.
That's insane.
That's fun.
What was the final score?
67 to 60 or 69, 67.
It's
I don't
crazy
remember.
to think
I don't
that
remember.
it came down to like a field goal or a single score. Let's just call it that.
And
Wild.
Mike Leach is one of the best coaches in the country. Let's think about this. He's at Washington State and Texas Tech. He took Texas Tech almost took him to a championship. Texas Tech and Washington State. He's almost won the Pac-12 now a couple times, and he could still win it this year, but that's just sensational of him.
This always seems to be the problem with the Pac-12, is they never have an undefeated team because something crazy happens and everybody has a loss or two, right? And it's, to me, one of the most complicated leagues, because week to week you never know what you're going to get. Okay, Stanford, they're going to bruise you on offense and defense, and then you go play something like Washington State where it's an air raid attack versus Arizona State where they don't huddle. Like, how do you... Week in, week out is just way more complicated. You know, at least LSU is adding a passing game, but it still doesn't compare.
The diversity of the styles of offense in the Pac-12 to me makes it a very fun conference. And I think if you're not an elite team, if you're a good team, it's harder to navigate because of that. And that's why these teams just have losses.
Still, well, to be fair, we haven't seen an elite team out of the Pac-12 in a while. We've had some close ones. You know, Washington a few years ago with Browning and Vita Vea, I thought was right on the edge of being elite. I think that maybe if they would have had a win in the playoff, it would have changed my mind a little bit to elite.
And they were pretty competitive against Alabama in that game.
Yeah, they were. I thought they were a great team.
But it was one of those games where...
It was a single season.
Right.
You knew Vita Vea was gone,
Oregon,
and sure enough,
during
next
Chip
year they
Kelly,
lose 3.
They were always on the cusp, but never elite. But they did make it. They did win a playoff game.
But UCLA is not great.
No.
And Washington State
is a good team.
Well, yeah, but they're not nearly as good as they were last year.
I would agree with that.
What I didn't expect from this game, or any game, is for everybody to score over 60 points. That's just insane. It's crazy. It's hard to rationalize. It's one of those fun games just to go back and watch if you don't care about either one of those teams, because there were also a ton of mistakes in this game.
It's Pac-12 after dark, baby.
Was this the one where they kicked... They punted to the other team, ran it back for a touchdown. And then they kicked to the other team, and they ran it back for a touchdown. Did that literally not happen in this game?
Pretty much. The game was chaos. So there was a stat where UCLA scored 28 points in 4.5 football minutes. Think about that. 28 points in 4.5 football minutes.
By UCLA.
Right.
Like, where you been, Chip Kelly? Is this like Will Muschamp waiting for Helinski to start?
Right.
Like all of a sudden you turn it on? What happened?
I think
Chip Kelly is supposed to be the offensive genius.
I think, they have a true freshman quarterback, and I think what you see is his ability, and maybe the lights clicked on. They still can't play any defense. They don't have any player. They really don't have a roster worth anything. But I think you're seeing the coach. In that game, you saw how. I know that it's still UCLA, but they're just so outmanned, even against Washington State. The fact that they came back and played that well in the second half, and that quarterback he is a talent, and I think you're going to see him have success in UCLA in a couple years. We had to define success, 8 wins in a couple years. That's probably it.
Okay.
But he's recruiting decently, and it was a horrible program when he took over, and that is one of the reasons why he signed a long contract, and UCLA is kind of, giving him the time that he needs, and I think it'll pay off eventually.
Oh, sure. I really kind of had hope that he was going to affect the NFL more. I was about to say the league, but he might as well. UCLA, I don't know what to really expect from him. Like 8 sounds great.
Yeah, I think in a couple years, 8 sounds great. There's not a lot of expectations there. It's an academic school.
But you're in LA. Like let's put it this way. I'm trying not to overthink this, and thank you again for being here.
Oh, of course.
My guest from yesterday, long story short, things just didn't work out, and the place where we were going to record had no power anyway.
Right, yeah.
Right, so serendipity strikes. I did not have time to prepare for today, so I don't have a lot of names written down. I forget a lot of stuff. We're recording on a Wednesday. All the games were Saturday. I wasn't in town. I've been crazy busy since. But...
Excuses.
The excuses?
Yeah.
I wasn't in Athens or anything like that, right?
Oh, neither was I.
Look, the Pac-12, I'm disappointed Utah lost. That's a personal thing, too. Their defense is still great. Their secondary just wouldn't turn around. It seemed like all night long.
Yeah.
What's his name? Fink? Is Fink the quarterback at USC now? It's their third guy, basically.
It's their third
right?
guy, and I can't keep... And I'm terrible with names. I didn't prepare either.
I don't think he's outstanding at all. I don't think anybody would. He can throw a ball. He can put it in the right place. But Utah just wouldn't turn around, right? And I got ahead of myself, but I thought Chip Kelly was going to be a real catalyst in the NFL. I thought hopefully the same thing would happen to UCLA, and I'll tell you why. Because of Clemson, right? Clemson had success in the past. This guy came who had never coached a game before in his life, turns everything around, makes them elite and national championship contenders and winners. I don't see a lot of that coming from I don't expect it from a lot of people. I had really high hopes for Chip Kelly because he did that at Oregon, right? He made them competitive. And Oregon, to me, was really nothing before Chip Kelly.
True, but they had success before him, and remember, that's Phil Knight.
Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I really don't remember them being anywhere close to what he had.
They had Joey Harrington. Oregon had a lot of success. It's Phil Knight. I think the difference is UCLA. It's a tough academic school. They don't make too many concessions for their athletes, much to the chagrin of their basketball fans. Because look, that's where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton. That's a basketball school.
I'm talking about the coach. I just thought the coach alone would be a big catalyst. What if he ended up going to, instead of UCLA, he was at USC? I don't think he would be that guy anymore to make everything work the way I thought he was responsible for at Oregon, the way Dabo is at Clemson, for example. Right?
I think that's where I might disagree with you. I think UCLA was in such terrible shape the way Jim Mora recruited there the last few years, and basically everyone left.
First round draft pick quarterbacks.
Well, they had defensive players, but Jim Moore had success in his last 3 years. They were horrible, and they were just getting worse because of the recruiting.
Sure, but do you think that Chip Kelly's going to turn it around this way, like Dabo? And look, I think Ryan Day, for example, might be able to do it.
UCLA is not investing into their football program like Clemson is. I wouldn't say the same. Yeah,
Clemson did because Dabo insisted on it.
Yeah, and
right?
Chip Kelly's not that type of guy.
Okay, is Ryan Day at Ohio State? I guess that remains to be seen, but I feel that's how I feel now about Ryan Day, the way I felt about Chip Kelly. Like, I'm hopeful he's a catalyst for people to go one day, oh, remember when we didn't believe that he was elite like Dabo, right? When we thought, oh, who's this interim guy? Who's this kid who's never coached before? Nobody's really talking about Ryan Day. And again, maybe we shouldn't. He's only coached, 3 games now? 4? Well, no.
Whatever.
This season, it's incidental. There's plenty more football to be played, and to be fair, Ohio State hasn't played anybody sincerely great, but you can tell fundamentals are great. And again, I don't see a lot of opportunities. Arkansas, Chad Morris. Chad Morris did arguably pretty well at Clemson, right? And then goes to SMU. Doesn't exactly take him to unprecedented heights, right? But then gets hired by Arkansas. You know what? Happy for you, Chad Morris. Who did Arkansas lose to at home this weekend? San Jose State University.
This is not the San Jose State of 6 years ago that was pretty decent. They were a bad football team.
This is a bad football team, and Arkansas is a bad football team. And frankly, I don't think Chad Morris is a great coach. Yeah, I know he inherited a lot of real bad mess there. But he's one of those guys who I never felt the same way I did about Chip Kelly or Ryan Day right now, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off on Chad Morris. He came from a power team with Bielema. I'm gonna wait to see what that's the thing. Sometimes you just need time to get players in there.
Bielema had us all talking about Arkansas, and Arkansas under Bielema gave a lot of elite teams hell.
Yeah, but
didn't beat many of them, but
but then he also had a lot of bad games as well, and then he became kind of a joke.
Okay, Arkansas's gotten worse.
Right, and I would say that's one of those things that if you want to update your team, you cannot be a power team in the SEC West and be Arkansas. You're going to have to out-scheme people and try to get speed on there. Right. Arkansas realized that. The whole experiment with Bielema didn't work. And so they're going to give Morris time.
It was more effective than Morris.
But it wasn't as effective as Bobby Petrino. Well, of course it is, but Paul Johnson's more successful than the Georgia Tech quarterback, the quarterback's Georgia Tech situation right now. Okay. But people wouldn't argue that's the best long-term goal of Georgia Tech.
So what would you argue? Who would you say is the next potential great coach?
I don't really
Don't say
know.
Nick Saban. He's already pretty good.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't really know right now. Ryan Day, look, he inherited a team full of NFL players. He's done a better job than Urban Meyer. Okay. Is he elite? I don't know.
So it remains to be seen, for sure.
It remains to be seen.
Do you see anybody out there with that kind of potential? Personally. It's okay. It's all speculation.
I really like what Bronco Mendenhall has done at Virginia.
Okay. Great name, too, by the way.
Yeah, great football name. I really like him a lot.
Great football name. I want to be called Bronco.
Right. That's a great everyone name.
In bed.
Maybe that's where he picked. Maybe did he pick that name up in the 70s when he was in LA?
When he was born? I don't know.
Yeah. So this is my. Yeah, I think I like him. But he's not young. I think everyone's on board with Lincoln Riley already.
Oh God, that's a great answer. No, Lincoln Riley.
I don't really know if there's any new guy out there, but those guys, I don't think they come around very often. I think they come around every couple of years, and I think we're waiting for that next guy to come.
I'm always looking. I'm trying to find who the next guy is. I thought Fickle, not so much. You know what I mean?
No,
Okay, let's say for example, I never know how to use these analogies, but let's put it this way: if something horrible happens to Dabo Swinney, maybe he gets caught with some endangered animals that he's slaughtering for steaks, covered in cocaine, with underage hookers in a stolen Ferrari. They have to fire him, right?
Yeah, right. They have to.
You're definitely promoting Brent Venables, Elliott. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to worry about it immediately, and you might be okay moving on, right? For sure. I don't see a lot of places with anything close to that. So, for example, Nick Saban might have a heart attack tomorrow. Are Alabama fans happy with Steve Sarkisian? I know you might argue that they probably should be. Is he the next great coach in the sport? I think if he was, we would have seen it already because he's been involved for so long. And he was at SoCal. I know he had a drinking problem.
Oh, that's the only reason why I got fired.
Well, okay, but that was symptomatic of all these other problems too, right? And look, you got to deal with your stuff. You got to, especially when you're getting paid by the state $4 million a year.
When you're a head coach of young men and you have a drinking problem like that, and you keep messing up publicly, you have to go. Yeah, I don't think anyone denies that. Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah.
Brent Venables doesn't have a drinking problem. I don't expect him to leave Clemson to become that next great head coach, right? But I think he might be a likely candidate if he did. However, I'm with you. I don't see a lot of guys coming up who I expect to be that way.
Right now.
Moorhead from Penn State, right, comes down to Mississippi State. I thought that was a great hire, but I don't expect it to be exceptional. I don't expect them to turn it around the way we saw before.
If they can get Dak Prescott back at there, they can have success. But that's the point, right? It's like
Dan Mullen did it, and it got him his dream job. And now look at Florida, just absolutely destroying the SEC East. They're elite, right? They're a top 3 team.
Probably not.
Insert laughter here.
I would say Tennessee. Have they been regulated out of the SEC yet?
Are you talking about East Tennessee State? I'd rather talk about them, to be honest.
Well, they beat Chattanooga, so I guess they're better than Chattanooga, right?
Not better than Georgia State.
That's their new arch rival.
Stop.
You hear that?
Not better than Florida, clearly.
No. Florida didn't look good or play well in that game, and they still won 34-3. Jeremy Pruitt obviously doesn't look like the guy at all.
We talked about this a little bit last week, so I'll keep this short. I think Jeremy Pruitt is one of the best coordinators and best recruiters out there, and not a great head coach. Even at Tennessee, the expectations aren't necessarily higher than their IQ. Still really bad. Thank you, Davey. Had to do that.
Yes, I appreciate it. So, yes, look, when Jeremy Pruitt took over at Alabama for Kirby Smart, when there was basically that swap, obviously Georgia made out better as a head coach over Marquardt with Kirby Smart.
Maybe Jeremy Pruitt's the next coach at Alabama. And we took Lane Kiffin, and then we took Butch Jones. Maybe take Pruitt back.
Yeah, I used to
show you what we can do with talent from Tennessee.
It was going to be Dabo. I think Dabo's going to stay here until he retires.
And then he had Alvin Kamara, who transferred from Alabama to go do nothing at Tennessee.
And then they don't even start him, and then he's maybe one of the 3 best running backs in the NFL. So that shows you, again, the talent analysis at Tennessee is not very good.
You know what it shows you? Roll Tide. You can laugh. It feels good. Crickets here on the Gray Zone podcast.
Yeah, crickets.
These are tough issues.
Yeah, these are tough. Jeremy Pruitt, but anyway, my point with Kirby Smart, Jeremy Pruitt was a better defensive coordinator than Kirby Smart at Alabama. He was. He had more success.
I agree. I loved Pruitt.
Yeah.
But I loved Smart, too. I thought he was terrific.
Yeah.
I don't think he necessarily evolved faster. I think Pruitt brought in some really interesting evolution to the sport.
They got better at the things that Alabama was weak at, noticeably in year one, with a lot of the same players. And so I think that's what I was most impressed by Pruitt. I thought he basically figured out a way to get an elite pass rush, even though they might not have had the typical elite pass rushers that were needed.
Oh my God, I miss having a pass rush.
Right. And so I think Pruitt, they're not going to fire. They're not going to fire. They're not going to fire him this year unless they lose every game in the SEC.
Okay.
And they might do that. So I'm not
not so fast.
Yeah, I'm not ruling that out. But I
do you want to go to Knoxville? I know I asked you before, but
the problem is Tennessee's not good, but they're better. Their talent is better than this. The Georgia State game is the mark that you can't ever get over it, because it wasn't that they were getting out-schemed. They were getting pushed around. That's unacceptable for Tennessee against a team like Georgia State. I think they might let them go.
Pushed around? So then Tennessee wore those shirts designed by the kid who got bullied?
And then they went and bullied Chattanooga.
And they bullied a team from their own state?
That was about 100 pounds less than them in each position group. Yeah.
Are you mad at me? I mean, is there a reason why we're still talking about Tennessee?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I thought it would be fun for you.
It's not fun at all.
Oh, I thought it'd be fun. Okay, let's move on. They're not really worth that much time. We have to talk about another game.
Please.
South Carolina.
I've heard of them. Now, this one, if you didn't watch it, I understand. If you did, the score doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what happened. Let me give you a quick breakdown. South Carolina was competitive in this game. Missouri, first of all, is playing better than they certainly did in week one. Mm-hmm. Well, they're one of the, I would argue, at least one of the more improved teams. And they're kind of starting to look like more what I expected them to look like in week one. So
I agree on that.
Kudos to Missouri. They're looking better. South Carolina looked pretty impressive against Alabama at home in spite of the large differential loss. However, they made some really costly mistakes. You know, they drove the ball, I think, like 78 yards all the way down on like a 6-minute drive. It took forever. Turned it over at like the 4. The guy runs it back for 6 points. Like, nothing really went their way when it was going their way. Then Jake Bentley, not Jake Bentley, oh my God, rest in peace, Jake. Holinski throws a pass. It bounces off a guy's hands. He accidentally touches it with both hands, right? So literally kind of catches it and throws it down. Well, that's literally considered a fumble, right? Like, he might as well just put the ball on the ground. Got to give Missouri credit here for knowing to jump on it, because they didn't necessarily have to do that, but they did, and that counts as a touchdown. So the score doesn't necessarily reflect that South Carolina was completely uncompetitive, but again, my takeaway, Missouri is finally looking better than we expect, better, more like what I expected them to. They're competitive. They're a fun team. They deserve the win.
Yes, and I think what we're seeing out of South Carolina, they're not as good as I thought they were, too. I think it's both things are happening as well. I think Holinski is talented, and they'll be fine there.
The pace was gone. What happened? The pace was super effective in week 2. It helped them look competitive, especially in the first half against Alabama.
Right.
It was all but gone now again. It was what I struggled with last year, and I don't like them, and I struggled with it.
You have to move on from what must champ. I think that's what you have. You have a quarterback that operates good in that tempo, and they showed it against Alabama.
That's another one where I struggle.
I think this year they have to turn around fast, and then maybe compete against Clemson. But it's at South Carolina this year, but I don't think that game's going to go well at all for South Carolina. So anyway, I think that's a local team. I don't have anything against South Carolina. Lou Holtz went there, so there's part of me that likes South Carolina. I have friends that went to school there, even though I went to Clemson. It's surprising. I think South Carolina is not an elite program, but they have enough invested into it, and there's enough people behind the football program and boosters to be more successful than this.
I think Will Muschamp is a good coach, and a lot of people disagree. I think he's not a bad leader. I think he's a good cultural fit for certain places, including South Carolina. I also feel like he has not made it work the same way we were talking about Harbaugh earlier, and it's kind of time for him to go and elsewhere. I don't like it because what I really wanted him to do was be successful. Look, here's what happened. That game, South Carolina looked good at first, and then they didn't. What game? Every game. No, literally every game so far this year that they've played, and they start off good, and then he has just plain lost this team. And I don't think you can get it back enough to be competitive versus whether or not it's worth to start looking for a new coach.
Yeah, I think you could even make a case.
And I don't want that.
You could fire him mid-season, and I would be okay with it to get the jump on the next coach. But the question is, you better have someone else. You don't want to be like Tennessee last year and get rejected 20 times.
Oh, my God.
But I don't think you'll have that because I think South Carolina has Helinski. I think there's a reason to be optimistic. They're not bad. When you look at them, the eye test, they're not bad out there. They're not a bad talent. They don't have, like, poor talent.
We haven't seen a full game from them yet.
Maybe
We just plain
one
have
of
it.
those guys like Jeremy Pruitt. He's really just a defensive coordinator. He failed miserably at Florida, and he looks like he's failing at South Carolina. But he's had great success as a defensive coordinator. I would take him as a defensive coordinator.
I think he was elite. I thought. We don't really have to think. He won a national championship as a defensive
He's
coordinator
an elite
twice.
defensive coordinator. He is, yes. I think that's really what he should be. I'm
still fascinated by that, by the way. How you can be so good at one position that's so close to being the head coach, but when it comes to being the figurehead and making all the other choices, it doesn't seem like it often works out nearly to the same degree.
I think where Muschamp's going to be next year?
Go on.
Defensive coordinator to Alabama. And you'll take that in a heartbeat.
Oh, are you kidding?
Yeah.
I'd celebrate.
Great recruiter.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not a head coach. And this is not you're not a failure.
God, that's interesting.
You're not a failure. Well, he has Nick Saban ties. He's not a failure, but he's failed as a head coach twice. One at a blue blood program, one at another program that's given him enough resources to a point where you have to call a pig a pig.
I hear what you're saying.
He's not a
You
head
might
coach,
be right.
But he is
I guess that's
an
really up to him.
elite defensive coordinator. Oh, he might take a head coaching job, but he's an elite defensive coordinator.
It's up to him.
So, yeah, it is up to him. Well, the South Carolina thing might not be up to him.
San Jose State, 31 over Arkansas, 24, and $1.5 million. That's a fun way to travel to Arkansas, I guess.
Yeah, but San Jose is pretty cool, though.
It's pretty cool. It's a really nice town. It's clean. It's kind of like Greenville.
I mean, I guess I would go at this point, take $1.5 million to go to Arkansas.
I'll take it. For a win? Yeah, let me have it.
A win and $1.5 million?
Do you give me another bad loss this weekend? There's so many.
There are so many. This is a very strange year.
I've got this in here. How many undefeated teams are left?
Well, I don't know.
Off the top of your head.
No, okay, we got
Give me a guess.
Clemson. Did Virginia lose at Old Dominion?
No.
They beat Old Dominion.
We wouldn't have had to ask that question.
Right. That's actually 100% right. Virginia. I'm going to the ACC. Is it just Virginia and Clemson now? Because Wake lost, right?
In the ACC?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think.
We don't have to go. We don't have to focus on that. But let's focus on the good teams. Wisconsin. Man, are they well coached or what?
Terrific. Underrated. Underexposed.
Well, I think what it is, Wisconsin always face plants eventually. They'll face plants against an elite team. Look, they don't have the players that these other schools have. Their offensive line's full of walk-on dairy farmers. I mean, they are. I mean, they're great, and a lot of them make the NFL. They don't have the talent. But seriously, they are the most well-coached team almost every year. They're never poorly coached. They lose because they don't have the players. I'm very impressed with that win against Michigan. I know Michigan's got issues, but 35-0.
You know how you make 90,000 white people look like they all have rhythm? Play jump around in your stadium when you're beating Michigan real bad at home. Jump around.
Man. Right. That would make me look like I had rhythm.
Nobody has rhythm, but because they're all doing it, looks like they're all MC Hammer out there, right? They're just super fly, right? They're Prince.
They're awesome. They're awesome.
Go Badgers. I'm happy for them.
I'm happy for
them. I really enjoyed that. Are you happy for SMU?
No.
The former Chad Morris team?
No.
Again, better than when he was there.
Kirk James played there, and no.
Beating TCU.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, TCU, they've, I think, fallen and they can't get up anymore.
Well, not when you lose to SMU. An in-state team.
But I'm saying they're not going to the Big 12 anymore, and now they're not beating SMU.
I brought it up because SMU is one of the undefeated teams.
Oh, there you go.
You want to take any more guesses?
I mean, besides your Blue Bloods, let's go.
Besides them? You're going to have to name them.
LSU.
Okay.
Auburn.
Go on.
I know you love Auburn.
They're
Alabama. Georgia.
There's an argument for them to be number one right now.
Yeah, that's going to end very shortly.
Sure. But right now they have a good argument.
Florida State's undefeated.
What? Nice try.
Not?
Florida is. No, they lost week 1 at home. BYU.
I know.
Okay. Florida is undefeated.
Florida State didn't lose to BYU. They lost to USC.
I'm sorry.
To
It was
BYU.
Boise State. Sorry.
Boise State.
Boise State.
Tennessee is
pretty close.
undefeated
Stop.
against
Finish.
Chattanooga.
How about Minnesota? Okay.
Has PJ Fleck turned? That's right. They are undefeated, but they have looked awful being undefeated.
Great. How about Memphis?
Memphis is always a team. They're always pretty good.
Like another one of those teams that I love
And they're
that
good
nobody
at
pays attention to.
basketball, too. Memphis is a sneaky good. Look, they're a sneaky good team to put in the Big 12. I'm just saying.
When I say go Tigers, you don't know if I'm talking about Memphis.
Right. So let's think about that. Conference realignment.
Go
Is
on.
Memphis Big 12. I'm just saying.
Don't get me started on this. No, I still think everybody goes crazy about the playoff, and let's just add more games. We have so many more teams, like including Memphis, that we can just start to think about changing the entire landscape.
Right. Okay, maybe
Change the
maybe
regular
this is a
season.
better way. I don't want to go down. You're right. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Has Memphis showed over the last 10 years in both sports that they belong in a Power 5 conference? I say yes.
Sure. I'm also saying let's eliminate Power 5, turn it into
Sure.
Power 4, make it true. So
I agree
they
with
only
that.
play each other, absorb the Big 10. I'm sorry, the Big 12, because they have 10 teams. Add more teams and subtract a
Can
few
Notre
others.
Dame stay independent?
Yeah, well,
No, they can't.
I don't think they
I
should.
want them to.
I think if we do something like Power
Notre
4,
Dame should be forced to join a conference, but I love the independence.
if
But
it's
you're
Power 4, I think Notre Dame would want to. Look, the being
they would
independent
have to.
has been smart, beneficial, and important to their identity as a school, right?
But if you
It
go to
has.
4, you have to. And I think
You
everyone
have
knows
got to
you
commit,
have to.
and I think Notre Dame would be willing to that if it's because when I say Power 4, power is a true sense of the word. Rutgers, there's no power in Rutgers. They don't rhyme. They don't use the same letters. It's a different alphabet as far as I'm concerned,
Is
right?
Rutgers undefeated? I'm just kidding.
You finished Wake Forest. How about Iowa?
Iowa's always sneaky undefeated early in the season. If they get through Iowa State, they're undefeated for the first 5 weeks. It's like clockwork with them.
The Mountaineers of App State.
Oh, yeah.
How about
App
Virginia?
Virginia.
All right.
Yeah.
No,
Michael
no, 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 no,
Mendenhall,
no, no.
My young guy. Well, he's not even really young. My guy that I think is a really great coach.
God bless America, and God bless the United States Navy. Undefeated.
Yeah.
How about the University of Alabama at Birmingham?
They're going to beat Tennessee in a few weeks. You know that one's coming. They're not going. They're going. Do they play Auburn this year? Because
Cal, LSU, Boise State, Oklahoma. I
state.
think that's it. Baylor?
Yeah, Cal.
Baylor.
Who's the head coach at Cal?
I believe it's Katy Perry.
Oh, really?
California Girls. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
song. Uh-huh.
But
I'm the
Cal
coach
head
at
coach. I think it's the guy from San Jose State from a few years ago.
Is that right?
So here's my point. He's the next. He might be the next guy.
We have to talk about that game real quick. Okay, good point. Okay.
Yeah, he might be the next guy against Ole Miss. That game.
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't expect it to be as close as it was. Ole Miss was, let's put it this way. Let's be real honest. Ole Miss was driving for a touchdown with time expiring to be able to tie if they got a 2-point conversion, right?
Right.
The theory ended up being, well, why didn't they review whether or not he got in? Your players should get coached by your coach to
Right.
hurry up anyway. You should be prepared for that. Instead, they're all sitting around waiting for something to happen. The criticism came against the refs, too. Everybody deserves a little bit of blame. They
agree.
probably should have taken a look. But don't forget that they needed a 2-point conversion just to tie. I think Cal was the better team. I'm glad that ended the way it did, just so we didn't have to go into overtime for that game because I was done with it. Cal was the better team. They still are. But I didn't want to see more. They weren't great. They're not a great team. They're a fun defense. They're a good defense. I can't wait to see what they do the rest of the year. Right now, it's really kind of hard to tell who they
one
really
of the
are.
hardest schools to be good at, and they're good. They're a good, well-coached team.
Cal's better than UCLA. Usually. After this past weekend, it's hard to say.
Lately, but historically, definitely not.
Right, that's my point.
Yeah, and
I
I
would
think that-
I think people are used to not thinking about Cal. And it's like, oh, well, wait a second. Ole Miss is not good.
They beat USC that one year. Why did they beat USC? Oh, they had Aaron Rodgers.
The SEC has some of the best conferences. Like, again, you say Power 5, all of the best conferences have some really bad teams. I would argue it's strange to think this, but hear me out. The Pac-12 might have fewer of those than anybody else. Like the SEC has Arkansas, really bad, okay?
Really bad.
Ole Miss, they're not good. They play Alabama this weekend in Tuscaloosa.
Tennessee's pretty good.
But the funny thing is, Mississippi State. Ole Miss is probably the toughest team Alabama has played to date in 2019. I say 2019. Oh, I triggered everybody. I mean the 2019 season, right? Because of January.
Sure.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
got to be real careful.
Yeah, don't be triggered, people. You
No,
know what I
it's
mean.
fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I don't expect that the game to be fun or competitive.
Yeah,
I hope neither team gets injured. That's about all I hope for.
I think the SEC has
Tennessee?
3 legitimate. Yeah, Tennessee's bad.
Sure. And you've also got Auburn, who is a nice little asterisk who can ruin any of those 3
Right.
arguably elite
They're
teams'
good
seasons.
enough to ruin a season. That's what they are.
And I wouldn't say all the rest. Florida is bad, but not bad like Tennessee bad.
No.
Not
And somehow
Vanderbilt.
they're undefeated.
Vanderbilt isn't bad. Kentucky isn't bad. They're not great at all. But I can watch them play football.
They're decent. Yeah, they're decent.
Okay, but then you still got teams like I said, Arkansas. Gross.
Are they the worst Power 5 team?
No. Arkansas? No. Davey, it's Tennessee.
True.
Don't come into my house
I
talking
know,
about
I know.
another team
I was
is
setting
worse.
up.
Let them
I was-
have something.
I was setting it. Okay, you throw out. Well, Tennessee. I didn't think Tennessee was Power 5 anymore. I thought they were regulated. So I'm confused. So
They're going to ruin the entire NCAA structure.
So Tennessee's no longer in the SEC. Is the worst Power 5 team Arkansas? You would have said UCLA until what they just did. So it's not them.
I would have said Rutgers until I saw that the center just slap the hell out of the quarterback after a touchdown.
Always, yes, you're right. I always forget that
Knockout.
Rutgers is actually in the Big Ten. They're not in the
See, that's
American
my point,
Conference.
right?
Yeah, they shouldn't be in the Big Ten. That's a joke.
There's teams like that.
Yeah, you're right.
So they are a joke. Arkansas has at least been competitive recently, somewhat. It's a tricky
Yeah, that's a
question.
tricky
I have
question.
a lot of respect. I don't like to put teams down, except for Tennessee. And even then, it's kind of supposed to be comical. I don't like to do that stuff. Here's my whole thing. Let's put it this way. In week 5, we haven't even seen what we think are the best teams play at their best against their best. We've seen a few really good games, but not many of them, right? And we're going to see
3
more.
maybe. Yeah,
We just
conference
might-
plays ramping up.
And maybe we won't see that from Clemson until, I was going to say the ACC title game, but maybe not even until the playoff. I think, and the only reason why I say that is because I think at least everybody else, we're going to get to see that so we have a better understanding. I do think, personally, I have Clemson number 1 right now. They're complete on offense, defense, special teams, and both sides of the line. And they still haven't played their best. They haven't played at their best, and they haven't played elite competition at all. And we, again, not going to play, certainly not elite competition until potentially the playoff, right? With that said, I think a lot of these other teams, you're going to have those matchups to be able to understand better how they perform in those big games and how they perform at their best, if they perform at their best, right? I mean, Alabama, like I said, hosting Ole Miss. Ole Miss has beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa twice, right? Under Nick Saban. Is it twice? I know they beat him in Oxford, and I know they beat him in Tuscaloosa once when Jay Coker had the flu.
Did they beat him like 3 out of 4 years or some weird thing like
No.
that? It was just
No.
twice, right?
Yeah.
It was back-to-back years. So one was in Alabama. The Jake Coker game was in Alabama. The other game was Ole Miss. So here's a question for you. Who is your top 5? In order, if you were ranking right now, and let's, again, things are going to change, but project right now.
I'll do it. But I want to preface this by saying, look, none of this matters. We have a singular committee who does a way better job than any of us do, and it matters, and they've done a really good job at making tough choices. That matters. Everything else doesn't, and that doesn't come out until November. I don't even want to think about November right now. With that said, I don't even want to, a lot of people, you can almost say Clemson and Alabama are 1A and 1B. I frankly don't. I have Clemson number 1 because I just see completeness, and I wish we got to see it more because it's kind of hard to explain that to anybody else. It's also kind of hard to expect anybody else to notice it because of the competition, right? Now, this weekend might help that a little bit, but I don't think it's going to help it enough versus, say, when Alabama plays LSU or Auburn or even Mississippi State, who I think is underrated, undervalued, but I'm certainly not arguing as elite. I got LSU at number 2 in spite of their defense. I got Georgia at number 3. I got Alabama at 4 because of their really bad line play that's hopefully going to get better. They're bringing back, I forget his name. Cornbread. We call him Cornbread, and I forget his real name. But and we never really found out what happened, except that we know it wasn't the same kind of violation that you would have to report, like if you got paid or if you had drugs. It sounded like a weed thing, but I don't know what else to think about that.
Right.
Bottom line, he missed, was it 4 games? It dovetailed from the last season.
Right,
That's my point. So he starts again this weekend. He's a legit advantage for Alabama to add to this line that has not done a really good job. That's why I kind of have them at 4. I'm tempted to put Ohio State at 4 instead of Alabama even because they have just looked so complete. And everybody says they've played nobody. to me, Cincinnati is not nobody.
Right.
And Ohio State held what I think is a good Cincinnati team, and you're just going to have – I'm not even going to explain what that means. Cincinnati is better than 0 points anywhere. And Ohio State did exactly that, okay? I think Ohio State is that good. And the rest of it is just kind of hard to tell. Did I get all 5?
Yeah. You could throw in Oklahoma, too, but I'm not there yet on Oklahoma. I want to see them play
That's
Texas.
another thing. Like, yeah, they haven't really played anybody else
Georgia,
either. This is another thing that we have to talk about because of the bye weeks. Like, Oklahoma, again, didn't play last weekend, right? And
yeah.
you're going to have that a lot this season because everybody's got 2 bye weeks. But I don't think Texas is it, for example, right?
Right. I think Georgia is number 1. I'm going to go with them number 1. I think the win against Notre Dame is the best win so far this season.
I'm not trying to – let's just be real.
This is going to change, and smarter people are going to make this decision for us. And this works itself out.
And you're doing that because of who they've played too, right? Or are you doing that just based on fundamentals?
I think it's because they're a very, very balanced team, and they have that good quality win on their schedule.
I think Fromm is underrated. I'm okay with Georgia number 1.
I think Swift's the best running back in the country. I think Fromm is a very, very underrated quarterback. I actually think now he's properly rated after the Notre Dame game. And it shouldn't have taken that for that to happen. He's played well in championship games, national championships, playoff games.
They don't exactly utilize him in a way that highlights his strengths. That's more, sort of their nature, which I love. I love that they sort of rely on the run. I miss that as an Alabama and a Clemson fan. I love seeing Georgia run, and I'm envious of that. I like to see it. I want that.
I have Ohio State too. And I get it, they haven't played anyone, but the absolute...
Again, I disagree.
They play
personally,
Cincinnati. Yeah.
And held them to 0.
They are so athletic. They are so fast. Justin Fields looks like the real deal. They're actually properly coached now, which is weird to say, but Urban Meyer and the coaching staff did a bad job the last 4 years.
UCF versus Cincinnati, that's just fantastic football that I can't convince anybody to watch.
Right. And I have, at that point, I have LSU 3.
Okay.
I have Clemson 4, and I have Alabama 5. And look, this is all going to change. I think Clemson, the ceiling is probably the highest for Clemson right now. I think they're not playing what they're capable of playing right now. I think there's some frustration from Clemson fans because they think they know how elite this team can be. Having said that, that defense is elite. And Xavier Thomas is the best player they've had on defense maybe in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And he's that good of a player.
He's not a household name. He's not even necessarily a household name amongst most Clemson fans that I've come in contact with. And I know I'm tricking people right now too. If you know who he is, great, of course, and you should. We just talked about Jake Fromm being underexposed, underrated. Clemson's defense, they lost everybody I say everybody. I feel like we've never recognized more superstars from a defense that left at the same time in a long time than we did with Clemson last year with guys like Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, all of those guys, Cleveland Ferrell, and so I think everybody expected the drop off, so they just stopped talking. It's a weird thing to think about, and I want to be careful how I say this. I think Clemson's potential to be better than even last year is there, in spite of because of the line isn't necessarily that important right now. They're doing what they're doing with 3 guys on the line. Brent Venables is bringing in safeties on every play, but you don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to rush the quarterback? Is one of them going to rush the quarterback? Are they both dropping into coverage?
They can put speed out there because of that defensive line
and
they
against
have.
all of them, they're keeping 3 on the line. 3.
And they can blitz from whatever direction you have. It reminds me of the old Steelers teams in the 90s.
It reminds me of nothing. I've never seen anything like it. And again, this is what's weird about it, is that this should be a huge story, okay? And it's crickets quiet. It's whisper silent. Nobody's talking about it. Clemson is doing this, running 3-3. 3-3, they're stopping the run against arguable at least some competition, right?
Yeah,
Texas A&M?
Yeah. Not a huge Texas A&M fan, but that's a real team they played. So.
Their special teams also underrated,
right?
You know,
which is always a weakness for them. It doesn't seem to be a weakness at all anymore.
But we don't talk about it because that's special teams. That's the nature of it. However, complete Georgia, Blankenship was terrific in that game.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things too, where I like them a little bit better than Alabama right now. If it comes down to kicking, who's going to win that?
Well, Alabama has an okay kicker, right? Not great. Oh, but guess what? He kicked the tee and messed up his foot. Now he's out 4 weeks. So if you thought Alabama was competitive,
missed an extra point too,
and somebody told you they don't have a kicker, and the one that they did have just got hurt, do you believe me? Frankly, I feel like you have no choice. That's just analytics, right? It's over. I say over. It sucks. It's not good. But it's harder to, especially with the competition we've seen them play, to say that they're definitely number one. It'll play itself out in a way that I think is really weird. Like, for example, Auburn. Why don't we have them ranked higher? They have the best schedule, right? Certainly the best schedule strength. To me, that's a different type of ranking. And what people get triggered by is that these are complicated issues. And the polls, like I said when we started talking about this, don't matter at all. Whatever you're judging them on, whatever criteria you're using to rank them, however you're ranking them from week to week to week, the only thing you can get out of them is whatever you want to take out of them. If you want to be mad about them, that's on you. If you want to have fun with them, have your own voice, give your own list, and talk about why, get a podcast. Call me. We'll get GVL Media to produce it. It's a blast. I feel better already talking to you about this.
All right.
And none of it matters because we have a playoff that, with a committee who I think has done such a good job at it, that it doesn't take it adds more to the fun of trying to guess these teams in week 5 and week 3 and week 0. Who cares? It's fun.
I think that's what it is. For me, talking about it is the fun part.
It
doesn't matter though right now.
Well, it's us too, right?
Us. Yeah.
I wish there were more people out there like that, including cultural leaders. I think some of them are or think they are, and it just doesn't really seem to hit. Like, for example, if you don't have Clemson number 1, I get it. A lot of Clemson fans don't. And don't have fun with it and get really mad about it. And I get that too. You know, this past weekend, there was a big story about the newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina. Holinsky's Hope is the name of the charity arm for Ryan Holinsky's brother who killed himself out west last year, right? Or 2 years ago, right? It's a charity organization that's dedicated to promoting and against the stigma of mental health, right? And suicide, not just suicide prevention and awareness, but also general mental health. It's a big trigger issue for me. I think it's super important. I think we can all benefit from it. I used to say it was like vitamins, but that doesn't necessarily work either because there's a lot of research that suggests that vitamins aren't necessarily as powerful as I thought. But let's put it this way. You can eat junk food your whole life and survive. You'll be just fine. You won't die, right? You can eat McDonald's every single day and it won't kill you. Eventually, it'll cause problems that will kill you, right? But you can have a good life. You know, Johnny Depp's never going to quit smoking. He's going to live to be 100, right? If you eat good, everybody benefits that. If you eat good and exercise, everybody benefits from that. Mental health is the same way. I hate to go off on a tangent. Just let me finish this real quick. The response to that story, where the headline of the article was Holinsky's Hope Sinks, right? Not realizing, or maybe it was just a bad mistake. I don't think anybody would mean to do that intentionally. That's against this charity organization that's trying to do really good. The response was overwhelmingly, what were you thinking? How could you make such a bad mistake? This is atrocious. You need to be fired. You need to be punished. You need to be ridiculed. You need to be nonstop. I don't want to say irony. It's not even that. I struggle with this real bad because this is an organization that's about mental health, which inherently is about forgiveness, right? Yeah, this guy made a mistake. He deserves to be punished, and certainly he should. It's been overwhelming, and I think it's kind of, look, let's be real clear too. It probably did more benefit than harm, right? I'm sure more people are aware of it now more than ever, right? Game Day did a great feature on it.
Money that might not have done it before.
This story, arguably, there's probably no way to measure that, but certainly I can't imagine they made less money because of this headline, and I'd like to think they made more. Maybe it's unprecedented. Who knows? Worth it? Maybe. I don't know. That's not the point. My point is, for us all to recognize that we can think, act, feel, and behave better, and that college football and its coaches and leaders are often excellent examples of that. This Holinsky family certainly is. This mistake is something we should all recognize that we're making too, right? That we can behave better, that we can forgive, that we're capable of not blowing it so far out of proportion, and that we're able to understand the difference between mistakes and real evil out there, because there's not a ton of it, but that's the stuff that we should be getting upset about, and it's not often in journalism about the sport or the sport itself. In fact, again, the sport itself is such a great opportunity to learn how to handle this stuff better, and it bugs me to see that happen to an organization that's trying to promote exactly that.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
I love this sport. I love to see these children become men in a way that a lot of millionaires in the league don't. And it's hard to get them to. I don't even blame them for it. By then, it's like your ego got you here. Why would you ever want to do the work to fight against it?
Right.
You know, Alabama. Clemson, Dabo makes Alabama fun. I get it. I love it. It's a different cultural look. And I think that's a personal choice too. I certainly can't blame anybody for making that choice. In fact, I celebrate it. I'm glad a lot of people are having a ton of fun at Clemson. I'm a Clemson fan. It's good for everybody as far as I'm concerned. Alabama, it's tough. The mantra they're sort of known for not being fun. Discipline isn't a bad thing in my book. I think it's important. I think more of us need more of it. And discipline inherently is about realizing how much power you have in yourself, right? And holding yourself accountable, right? Taking control of your life, of your decisions, of the things that you can control about how you think, act, feel, and behave to affect your future and the future of those around you, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's bad at all. I don't think what this guy did was really all that bad. I think it needs to be punished. I don't know what the punishment should be. And I'm glad it's over. Let's put it that way. And I'm done talking about it. However, for anybody out there listening, if you're interested in mental health or anything like that and you don't know where to go, hit me up. I'm on Twitter at Color of Gray, Instagram at Color of Gray Studio. There's tons of opportunities out there, more than ever before. And certainly looking at college football and the news of college football, that alone isn't going to help you. But we could talk about that another time. But that's all. Thank you for listening.
No, yes. I mean, look, I've struggled with mental health issues myself. So,
we all do.
Yeah,
every single one of us.
And I actually saw a therapist and a psychiatrist, and that was very helpful for me because there should not be a stigma.
You know who else does? Every single kid just about on most of these elite football teams.
And they should.
I don't think it's a coincidence that these kids are getting elite level psychiatric treatment care, right? We take for granted how much they get. We say, okay, you get a scholarship, that's your room and board. No, you're also getting world-class health care, which includes fitness and nutrition, strength, conditioning, and also mental health. It's a huge part of every super successful program out there right now, right? What I don't think is a surprise is when you see a team have a flash in the pan of success, like Baylor had a few years ago, with really poor behavior outside of the field, right? And including on the field. They were violent. They were dangerous. And they were violent criminals, some of them too, off the field. And again, now you don't have necessarily that kind of success. And I'm not trying to pin Baylor under the bus so much as to say, okay, well, I'm glad it's over, and I like Matt Rule a lot. I'm glad he's there. I think he's another really good example of a good leader, of a good way for young men to think, act, feel, and behave from another adult, right? Of how to learn to deal with adversity. We talk about adversity, but we sort of equate that with losing or being close to losing at home against a tough team, right? Or having a guy get injured who you think you can't live without and still coming out with a win. That's not the same as it is adversity, make no mistake. But we all face that stuff. I was talking today about Robin Williams. Robin Williams was rich, powerful, popular, well-loved. He was funny, self-sustaining, everything you'd think everybody would want, and he kills himself. Was nobody listening? I don't know. Was it preventable? It feels like it's preventable every time. I know I'm talking too much about this, but again, I celebrate seeing all this stuff, and I wish more of us talked more about it. I think the irony is instead we have all these great leaders, and we continue to perpetuate these self-harm ideas, these negative thoughts, these us against the world mentality. That's why I struggle against it. I think it's a bad way for people to look at the world. I think it's not healthy from an individual standpoint, and I hate to see that happen to a lot of people who I think, number one, are smarter than that and deserve better than that. I care about them, including you, as you're wearing your Cubs shirt.
Yeah, that's sad.
You going for the pennant?
No, we're out.
Any games you super looking forward to this weekend? North Carolina and Clemson, that might actually be a lot of fun, but I don't know what to really expect.
Not really. I'm excited to see how Notre Dame plays Virginia. I want to see what Virginia is like up and close in person on that element. I want to see how Notre Dame handles an upsetting loss on the road and how they mentally get prepared for that.
I hear you.
I really want to see Oklahoma and Ohio State get into league play. I really want to see if they're...
You're in luck. Ohio State plays at Nebraska for game day this weekend. Isn't that right?
Right. And so I'm really looking forward to that because I think Ohio State could be the best team in the country this year, but I need to see them do it against more teams. I know they did Cincinnati, and that's awesome and impressive, but I want them to see them against teams that know them and are familiar with them that are in conference. So I want to see that more, and I want to see how Ryan Day goes up against better coaches and stuff to see if is he just out talenting everyone or is he out scheming and out talenting everyone. So I would say the Ohio State game. I continue want to see Oklahoma with Jalen Hurts, and I want to see how that goes. I need to see more.
Who do they play this weekend?
I think next week is the Red River Shootout. I think
that's next weekend.
I think it's next weekend. It's always early, and it's always a noon game, and that's the game that I love. I love that. I love those games. Those are always good, close games, and you never know who's going to win.
You know how boring that game is? It's not.
It's not.
It's always the opposite. With that, it's banging. It's crazy. It's
they
so much
play in
fun.
the old Cotton Bowl Stadium. It's just great.
A state where I don't want to say that's all you got, but it is like arguably the most important thing to have those two in-state teams play each other. It doesn't get any better than that. I miss Texas and Texas A&M, but that doesn't have nearly the same luster as Oklahoma State does. To me, that's personal. What?
Red River Shootout is Texas, Oklahoma.
That's another example, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh yeah.
Like there's lots of those.
But you know what though? Oklahoma State never wins.
They make it fun though. They make it a ton of fun. They've come super close.
Right.
They've scared everybody.
I think they've
everybody.
won
if you care about
one
Oklahoma
game against Oklahoma in the last 18 years. It's that bad. But they're always close. So that is definitely little brother. One day Oklahoma State will push through, but probably not while Lincoln Riley's there.
All right.
Anyway.
No, and I don't want that. I don't
want to rain on your parade. I watch that game every year.
I don't love Tom Herman. I really don't. I don't think he's a great leader.
Like
and by nature, that means I'm not pulling for Texas in a lot of these games, even though I kind of like Texas a lot. I like Sam Ehlinger. But I love Lincoln Riley, and I certainly love Jalen Hurts. And I'm happy to celebrate that success.
Let's before we go,
please.
Lincoln Riley. Oklahoma has to do everything possible to keep that guy from the league.
Well, they will, and they're going to try. It's not up to them.
It's not up to them.
Right?
Well, because they'll match whatever. It's just a matter of does he want that next challenge? Which honestly, I don't think people would blame him if he did that.
Can I ask you? I have not heard if he does. Dabo hasn't really said much to suggest that he would ever want to go pro. He always says, "You never know." It just doesn't seem like that kind of
He's
thing
not a pro
would
guy.
Interest him.
Yeah.
Plus, he signed the biggest contract ever for 10 years. So I don't expect him to leave.
Dabo Swinney's personality is more an executive and a recruiter and building an organization around him. You don't do that in the NFL.
Well, no. I argue that he would. Like, he would make... I think Dabo is the kind of guy who would be successful anywhere. My point is,
I think he would be a more successful GM, if that makes sense.
I'm not trying to say he's doing anything wrong. But if something goes wrong, or he gets fired, or the program crumbles, or whatever, and he has to leave Clemson for whatever reason, and I can't think of a good one, so just hear me out. If he leaves Clemson, I don't think he goes pro, and if he does, I don't think he wouldn't be successful. I think he would. But under his own circumstances, I don't think he would. I haven't heard the same for Lincoln Riley, and albeit I don't pay much attention to it, but have you heard that he's interested in it?
No.
He seems perfect for the sport, for college.
The interest comes from NFL teams.
I get it.
So I think that's all that means. So
I hope not.
Yeah, I think it's all going to be interesting. Hey, thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for being here. Got anything else you want to leave us with?
I think I'm good.
Can I just say, we just talked about mental health. I feel like you've done a really good job of handling this loss.
What?
Because it is kind of definitive, right? It's not just a loss. It's not even a moral victory. You're kind of eliminated from the playoff.
Right.
But again, we saw some teams perform really well in week 1, 2, or 3, and people were upset about the performance instead of happy to have a huge win on the road with great stats.
Realism is a very important thing to have with your team, and I appreciate the realism that you have with Alabama. It would be very easy for you.
And Clemson and Notre Dame, by the way. I'm happy too.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be very, very easy for you, and as an Alabama fan, to just be like, to not even think about the issues that you particularly have.
I'm already preparing for Alabama to lose either to LSU, frankly less, than Georgia in Atlanta.
Right.
In the SEC final game. I'm sincerely preparing for that.
Says they're not as elite as they have been. Now, they do have that Tua and those plethora of smorgasbord of NFL receivers on their team.
I think that's sort of the icing, right? And nobody can realize that. I don't know what to put under the cake. Right, but it's not cake.
Like, Alabama is definitely capable of winning the national championship, but it'll be on the backs of that.
That part is the most elite, I think, that we've ever seen Alabama's offense. Right?
I would say it's the most elite group of receivers in the country, and you have a just distributor at quarterback that just gets the ball out. You don't know where it's going. I think it's an enormous advantage. The other issues at Alabama make it make them not look like the Alabama teams we've seen in the past. Having said that, it's fun, and we have these games coming up because, look, LSU is elite. They look offensively. They have issues on defense.
That's a great example, though, right? If you lose to LSU, you go, I can't wait to see what LSU is going to do now. Because I would argue that makes them really, really good. Right. Same with Georgia, right? Let's see how Georgia performs in the playoff. They beat Alabama. I'm okay with that.
Right, and I think.
Okay, so I'm okay with that. It would take me 4 or 5 hours, and then I'm okay with it.
But I think you would understand.
Yeah.
Like you go into it with the expectations. This is not, for instance, if you had the Alabama defense of 3 years ago with this offense and Derrick Henry, right? You would not be, and if you lost a game to LSU, you would be angry. And I think it's all about expectations.
Derrick Henry is a trigger for a lot of people. I loved Derrick Henry. Deshaun Watson may have deserved the Heisman. There's an argument for it. Certainly not worth getting furious about.
No.
That's what I don't get. Because Derrick Henry to me was just, that guy was bulletproof.
Deshaun Watson threw a lot of interceptions that year. If he played the last half of the season as well as he did the first half, he would have won the Heisman.
There's an excellent argument. He was the best player in the country that year.
Derrick Henry was Mr. Consistent. 30 carries a game was so important to the team.
I've just never seen a guy who never got hurt, really, much at all.
He's a truck.
And could take 30 or 40 carries, including against tough O-lines, including teams like Auburn, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Well, Ole Miss. Even back then, they weren't that great. But LSU, for example. Even Clemson. Derrick Henry was he stood alone.
Yeah.
And I miss him.
Yeah.
I don't ever expect to have a guy like that anywhere.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Frankly, he was on whatever. Won't get into it. Well, how do we do these tangents, right?
Yeah, we were supposed to get off, and then that's
Didn't I ask you what else you wanted to say?
Yeah, and I was like, nothing. And then I talk another 15 minutes. Yeah. Thanks again for having me on. And
thanks for being here.
Yeah.
All right, don't forget.
Go Notre Dame.
Go Irish. Oh, there you go. Don't forget, go to iONGreenville.net, do your college football pick'ems. Go to FETGreenville.com and read Fet Greenville Magazine. FETE. You're listening to the Gray Zone Podcast. GREY. I'm here to help people. This is all about learning. Thanks for being here, Davey. Go Irish.
Again.
Go Tigers. Roll Tide. See y'all.
Not red, not blue, not white, not green, just gray. Just gray.